Howdy and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Going to be looking at another Heller kit today. This is the Liore et Olivier 451, commonly referred to as the LeO 451. This is the 1971 issue of a 1966 initial release. It's kit number 391. We've got box art by a gentleman by the name of Paul Liore, and this particular aircraft was issued in two different versions from Heller, the LeO 45 and the 451, and the main difference between the two is the 45 has the early style of tail fin, which has kind of a notch in it. That was for the first 20 or so production aircraft, and then they needed some more stability, so they enlarged the tail fin, and that's basically the only difference between the two kits. But they did issue them throughout the years as one or the other. So the LeO originated as part of the origins of the Armée de l'Air, which was the separation of the French Air Force from the Army, and that occurred April 1st of 1933. So they wanted to start developing, an independent Air Force. Previously, the aircraft that had been ordered, developed, were all focused on supporting the Army. So the new Air Force wanted to really separate themselves and look at bombing in a more strategic sense, and so they developed what they called Plan 1, which was to get 1,010 modern aircraft by 1936. Out of that 1,010, 350 of them were to be bombers, and that would be made up of 210 medium bombers, 120 twin-engine, what they would consider heavy bombers, and then 24 engine heavy bombers. The majority of those requested aircraft were met by the Bloch MB 200 and 210, the Amiot 143, the Poté 540, and then finally the four-engine was met by the Farman 221. They were somewhat advanced aircraft, but many of them were actually kind of layovers from requests from the Army, so they weren't really fitting the need that the Armée de l'Air was looking for. Still kind of multi-role aircraft as opposed to specialized in specific things. So in November of 34, a new Service Technique Aeronautique specification was issued for what they call the B5, which is a five-place heavy bomber. They wanted to see 400 kilometers an hour, roughly about 250 miles an hour, range of 700 kilometers, about 435 miles, and be able to carry a bomb load of 1,200 kilograms, roughly about 2,650 pounds of bombs. They wanted to be able to operate by day or by night. Shortly after that, there were some changes or improvements in the engines that were being produced at the time. So they revised that plan in 35 to what they called Plan 2, and they wanted to incorporate the new 1,000 horsepower engines. So they increased the specification requirements to 470 kilometers an hour, so about 290 miles an hour, and they also reduced the amount of crewmen from 5 to 4. They figured the co-pilot could also act as the bombardier. They were looking to purchase enough of these aircraft to equip 41 squadrons of approximately 12 aircraft each. So the LeO design first flew in 16 January of 37. By then, they had been absorbed as part of the SNCASE, which was the French government decided to basically kind of take over aircraft manufacturing and then lump together the existing private firms into conglomerates that were in different areas. So the SNCASE was lumped in as part of the southeast of France group of manufacturers. All that kind of stuff that was going on really affected the production of most of these aircraft. Along with labor issues, strikes, the French aviation industry was in a lot of turmoil in that time frame, and that resulted in a lot of potentially good aircraft just not being available to fight when war actually finally did come. So when it was first built, the LeO 45 had Hispano-Suiza 14 AA6 and 7 engines. They were handed left and right. They were radials with about 1,120 horsepower. It exceeded the specification. It was able to go 480 miles an hour, or 480 kilometers an hour, approximately 300 miles an hour. It had a forced landing shortly after its first flight, 6th of December. That allowed for some modifications to be done, and new really tight cowled Mercier cowlings were applied to it. Kind of the precursor of the Focke-Wulf 190, basically used the Mercier cowlings to get real good speed out of a larger radial engine. So the LeO 45 was one of the first to incorporate that, and that helped increase the speed even further to about 500 kilometers or 311 miles an hour. So pretty hot ship for a bomber in 1937-38. So unfortunately, they continue to have problems with the Hispano-Suiza engine, a lot of overheating, teething problems with it. So they swapped out the engines for some Gnome-Rhone 14Ns. They were slightly underpowered at 1030 horsepower, but it didn't really affect the speed all that much. They were able to still keep the aircraft cruising along pretty good. But that resulted in the change to the 451 designation. And so the boxings from Heller are kind of not correct, in that the 451s were due to the engine change, not the tail. The ones that they call 45s with the notch tail are still actually 451s. So kind of odd that Heller, a French company, would really screw that up. And they continued to make that incorrect separation through the entire production of these kits. So there's a lot of, as I mentioned before, a lot of production problems, labor problems, this, that, and the other. The propellers wouldn't show up. They'd had problems with the brakes. All kinds of just stuff was going on. So delayed production considerably. So the first production aircraft did not fly until 24 March of 1939. By September 39, when the war starts, there's 749 of these on order, but only 10 were actually in service. More orders came, totaling 1,549, by the time of the Blitzkrieg in the West. So, 10 May of 1940, there still were only 54 of these LeOs, ready, for combat. There was another, 100 or two that were in various states of, the service testing, ready to go to squadron. But at the time when the fighting started, there's 54 of these. They ended up not being able to contribute a whole lot to the defense of France. Different sources give some different numbers, but approximately about 400 sorties were total were flown, dropping about 320 tons of bombs. During that time period, until the surrender, 47 of them were lost to combat. About 100 were lost total. 26 to fighters, 21 to anti-aircraft artillery. Altogether, when production finally stopped, 561 had been built. So, not a whole lot to show for potentially good aircraft. French get maligned a lot for some of their really ugly planes that look like flying greenhouses and shoe boxes and stuff. But this LeO is a pretty slick looking aircraft. A little portly, but it's still a good plane. I mean, 300 miles an hour for a twin engine aircraft bomber, in 1939 is pretty good. So the LeO went on, as they were, getting overrun. They sent all the LeOs down to North Africa. They continued engaging and fighting, against the Italians until the final armistice occurred. And then the LeOs were also used in some of the skirmishes against the French, or I'm sorry, against the British, with some bombing raids on Malta, Syria, some of those actions that occurred. And then finally, when the Allies landed in North Africa and Morocco, some of them participated in the defense of North Africa, but that ended fairly quickly. Switched sides back to the Ally sides. They engaged in some activity up through 43, and then these were finally swapped out for B-26s. So that's a little bit of history on your LeO 451. Not a common aircraft. So let's take a look at our kit. So this artwork that you see on here, this kind of box style, was used from the beginning issues of the kit. Didn't change much until the later 70s, or actually the 80s, I should say. Really neat looking artwork. I got to say that the Heller kits, especially the 60s, early 70s kits, have got some fantastic artwork. Very painterly, full of energy. It's really good looking stuff. So we got a signature down here from the artist, and then up here we've got Heller, and scale of 1/72, LeO 451. On the side is real plain, just the Heller logo on here. Same thing on this side. As you can see, the artwork just wraps around the whole box. So unlike most other manufacturers who are putting other information, other kits available, Heller just did their own thing. On the end, we've got same information here. We've got our kit number, the L389, made in France, and a repeat of the top box art. This end's identical. Nothing on the bottom. This is printed directly onto the cardboard, and the cardboard's all folded up to make a little bit of a stiffer box. Same thing with the bottom. It's a folded up box, making it a little stiff as well. Then we've got our instruction sheets, our sheet. This one here is, from the 71 issue, which by this point they were going into multi-language ones. The first issues of these were just all in French, and so this side here is the French side. On the back side, we've got it also in English and I believe German. Yeah, so there you have the information in English. And the mention on here of the 391B, the 4.5 kit was 391 as well. And so then the different tail, they made it as B on the original issue. But by this later issue, they changed that. So let's look what we got here. Information about the aircraft, how to assemble kits, and then we've got a giant exploded view, which this is okay when you've got 12 parts, but when you've got, number counts going all the way up into the 90s, this is a challenge, of how to assemble this kit. And then you've got all these little step-by-step instructions up here, which are somewhat limited considering how large and how complicated this kit is. We've got our landing gear assembly over here. They're really putting effort into a lot of detail on here, but kind of finicky in the way that they assemble. And that's one of the things you'll notice with Heller kits is they're a little odd. They go together a little differently than everybody else. That's the French for you. So we do have quite a bit of interior detail being added in here. It's still very simplified, but you can see that they're, giving you seats and bulkheads and, equipment and stuff. They're even giving you little bits of equipment to put inside the canopy and inside the nose. They do include the ventral gun dustbin that was retractable. You got a 20 millimeter cannon. Something that was kind of neat about the LeO was it had a power operated 20 millimeter cannon for rear defense on the top. Unfortunately, it was a 60 round drum, and it was extremely difficult to replace that drum. So you're done firing your 60, you were out of commission for a while. The kit shows this thing being huge, and when you see the plastic, it's a little oversized. And then the LeO itself, so you have the 20 millimeter on top. You had a 7.9 or 7.5 MAC 35 machine gun in the dustbin, and then there was one mounted under the nose that was fired by the pilot. So you can see here you've got a lot of equipment and a lot of extra stuff inside here, which for a 60s kit is pretty impressive. And then up here you've got a 3 view of your paint scheme and decal placement. So there you have it. Now send in for missing parts. And that's that. Here's our decals, match up with the artwork on the cover. Got kind of a wax paper covering on it. Only one aircraft is represented here. They do give you some decals for instrument panel. Kind of odd being white with black, but I'd have to look and see if maybe that's the way the French painted the interiors on that, but I think that might be reversed. So this aircraft is supposed to represent a specific aircraft. This was number 11 that was assigned with GB, or Groupe de Bombardement. 125. It's the first squadron of the 25th group, and these guys were based in Tunis at an airfield called El Aouina in 1942. That squadron was originally a naval squadron, and they transferred to the Arme de l'Air in January of 1936. When the war, when the fighting started in May, they were still, equipped with MB-200s. They were based in North Africa at the time, but they did switch over to the LeOs and did engage the Italians, and then stayed in North Africa until the Allied invasion. So these are, not the best decals in the world. Something that's odd is, I don't know if you can see this or not, but the blue has like dimples on the blue area. So kind of strange, fairly yellowed. I don't know if these are going to be savable or not, but there's your decals. So unfortunately, I couldn't find any photographs of this specific aircraft. So I'm going to show you a couple other photographs of other squadron aircraft, or from the same squadron, but I was not able to locate this actual number 11. So we'll take a look at those here. Okay, so we're going to look at the plastic, and this kit has never been opened, so we're going to be opening it for the first time. And smell that 70s fromage. Okay, let's get our parts out here. So we've got basically 3 screws, and the main pieces are loose. So we'll separate this out here so we can look at it. Oops. There we go. Okay, so let's start with our fuselage. So here's our fuselage here. We've got some really fine lines for panel lining. That's pretty nice. No rivets showing. A little bit of hatch or other kind of markings on here. Here's where our fixed nose gun is, and side hatch. Little windows down the side. As you can see in here, there's nothing on the interior. Kit numbers printed in here. And the tail wheel doors are molded in place. So if you're going to make it with the gear down, you're going to have to trim this and fold it out. And this half here's got the Heller name printed inside. And similar again, no gun or additional windows on this side. But the same real fine panel lines here. And then we've got our wings. So here's the lower, here's the upper. Kind of an odd way of doing this again. Having the upper, having the seam line out here instead of the other way. Most of the time when you see the wings being done in this kind of style, it's the other way around. So where these seams are on the bottom, but they got them up here. You do have the oil cooler intake here, but here's the other odd thing. Then you've got flaps and ailerons as a separate piece, but yet you can't pose them because the bottom's in fixed place. So I don't understand what the purpose of that is, other than, hey, it kind of, it looks better, I guess. But very strange. We do have something I didn't realize as part of the aircraft, but it's got upswept wingtips. I never noticed that in the photographs. But yeah, both wingtips are upswept. But some really good panel lining, really fine. Little other detail here. There's a little bit of riveting on these panels here. And again, the gear doors are molded in place that you'd have to cut them open if you're going to do it with the gear down. So there's that. A little bit of, there's some kind of texturing going on there for the fabric covering. So that's kind of nice. And here's our other wing. Okay, let's see what we got on this sprue. So we've got our tail. So our tail's got a little bit heavier lining on here, panel lining, so must have been noticeable on the actual aircraft. We've got some fabric covering representation on the top of the surface, but the bottom looks like it's smooth. And then our elevators get fabric covering, but again, same thing. You've got that separated on the top, I guess, to make it seem that it is a separate piece. So detail wise, here's all of our seats, our interior parts. Not highly detailed, but at least you're getting something. Unusual control column. Looks like that's probably a camera of some sort or bomb sight. The control wheels, all kinds of little bits and stuff. Here's our dust bin. Here's the floors. And there is some texturing. There's a little bit of detail on there. And there's our 20mm cannon. Nice and oversized. So there's that one. And then this sprue has some of our engines. And here's all the landing gear bits and pieces. Tail wheels are one piece, fairly plain. But overall, I think this would probably turn out to be a pretty decent looking kit. Propellers are very thin. That's nice. And then here's the rudders. So I actually have one of the kits that are marked as a 45, and the only difference that I can see between the two kits is literally these two pieces, having the different shape on the vertical stabilizers. There's that. And here's our clear pieces. This is fairly thick, like Airfix thick. But they do have, it is on the surface, so it is some surface detailing for the framing. Yeah, and it's very delicate. That front nose piece is a little kind of hazy, but you don't get what you see in a lot of these, where you get some like ejector pin mark or bubbling or something. And I think that's probably because they've got these little tabs here to let extra plastic flow out to get a good look on that. Here's all your itty bitty little detail windows and your dustbin glass and your rear turret glass. So you get a lot of clear pieces on there. All right, so there you go. That is your LeO 451. So Heller issued this kit quite a bit in this in the 45. So 67 was the 45, or I'm sorry, 66 was the 45, 67 is a 451, 68 a 451, 68 and also a 45. All basically identical, boxing, same artwork and all that. The only difference is slight changes, like the early ones say Musée. A couple of changes in a little bit of details on here, but they all basically look the same. So I did that 68, 71, 74, back and forth between the 45 and 451. Finally, in 1980, they did a revision of the box. That's when Heller was using the black outline boxes and developed new artwork. That was a 451 that was issued. And they also did a 45 at the same time. 86, Heller was boxing with Humbrol names on them, and that's when they did their photo box issue. And then 87, Smir in Russia did an issue of it. In 90, new boxing from Smir. The 98, Hasegawa, of all people, did an issue of the 451 kit. Photo box, it's a photo of a built model, which is very unusual for Hasegawa. And then finally, or almost finally, 2006, Smir did another one with some new revised box. Heller in 2017 and 2018 reissued the 451 and 45 in their kind of what I call a nostalgia boxing, doing the same, basically making it look like the original 60s issue. And final issue on it that I could see is in 2019. Mr. Craft got a hold of the molds and the 451 and have issued that as well. So this kit should be fairly easy to get a hold of. Tons of releases and very recent releases. So if you're interested in building one of these, it should not be hard to find. If you've got one of these built and on your shelf, take a picture of it, send it in, or tell us about it in the comments section. And we'll include your photos in the next viewer build video. We're getting real close to getting that finished up for the next one. So if you got something, send it in pretty soon. The email address is in the channel description. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and have yourself a great rest of your day.